From Octocinclus to mollies, these are the 7 best algae eaters for a betta tank. First up is the Octocinclus Catfish, also known as dwarf suckers, as they're a type of nanofish. They feed on soft green algae and diatoms, though sometimes they do their jobs a little too well and consume all the algae in your tank. You might need to supplement their diet with algae wafers or some soft greens like zucchini. They've got a habit of sucking onto aquarium glass, plants, and hardscape beachers. Otos are peaceful but aren't recommended for beginners. If you're to keep them with bettas, it's best to keep them in a school of 5 or more in a 10 to 15 gallon tank with a temperature of 70 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. The larger the tank, the better. If you're considering getting a snail in your tank, then the Nerite snail would be the ideal candidate on our list. These snail species are highly recommended for tanks of at least 5 gallons as they're quite easy to take care of, and their preferred temperatures work with a betta, as they can tolerate temperatures in the high 70s Fahrenheit. These snails are not only diligent in controlling the population of soft green algae, diatoms, and green spot algae in your tank, but they also add an aesthetic appeal to your aquarium. Nerites may lay eggs in the tank, but these snails breed in brackish water, so they won't be able to breed in your tank. The good news is most betta fish will get along well with nerites, but other aggressive fish species might take a nip at them. Most snails add appeal and color to your tank, and the mystery snail is one of the best, where its looks come in various colors, they're large, and they're easy to care for. Compared to the nerite, however, they're not as good with algae control, but they'll keep your tank clean as they consume various algae types and even uneaten food in the tank. If you'd like to breed these snails, it's preferable to keep 2 or more of them in a 5 or more gallon tank with a temperature of 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. But if you're avoiding breeding, just keep 1. Other snail species like rabbit snails and ram's horn snails are helpful for algae control, although you might want to avoid species like ram's horns and Malaysian trumpet snails if you don't want breeding happening in your tank. We've got a video all about aquarium snails that you can take a look at. Check it out in the card above. Next, we're going to move over to much bigger fish like the Bristlenose Plecos. These are excellent algae eaters for larger betta tanks for at least 20 gallons, and they'll tolerate the warm temperature preferences of your betta. They feed on hair algae and cyanobacteria, and I'd recommend having plenty of driftwood in the tank as they love to graze on them. They're also going to eat algae that grows on plants. Although the Bristlenose Pleco may have a peculiar appearance due to their bushy beards, these fish are very peaceful with other species and won't bother your betta fish. The downside though is that they produce a lot of waste due to their vegetarian diet, so you need a decent filtration and regular tank maintenance. Another larger fish on our list is the mollyfish. Mollies can grow to 3 to 6 inches as adults, so a minimum tank size of 20 gallons and a temperature of 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit is necessary to accommodate both bettas and mollies. These fish are great in controlling algae population in your tank, especially hair algae, which is usually caused due to excessive lighting and nutrient levels. Mollies thrive in hard and basic water conditions, so pairing them with bettas that are used to soft and acidic waters might require an adjustment. Fortunately, mollies are very adaptable fish. Keep the parameters to the liking of your betta and have your mollies acclimate. If you're looking to keep their number in check and avoid breeding, expect a lot of offspring if males and females are kept together. It's best to keep a couple of males. The Hillstream Loach is one of the most unique freshwater fish in the hobby. These species resemble tiny freshwater stingrays, and they feed on soft green algae and diatoms. Though they are good algae eaters, the Hillstream Loach may not be the ideal tank mate for a betta fish, so choosing this fish might incur some difficulties. But to keep them in an ideal environment, it's best to have a tank of at least 20 gallons. These algae eaters prefer a well-oxygenated aquarium with a rocky bottom, so adding an air stone for increased oxygenation and water movement will make them feel right at home without creating too much agitation in the water for your betta. The last algae eater on our list is the clown pleco. Though this pleco species is not as effective as Bristlenose Plecos or Octocinclus Catfish, they make up for it in terms of behavior, as they're peaceful fish that work best in a 20-gallon betta aquarium. These algae eaters can effectively clean up a small aquarium, although they spend most of their time feeding on biofilm on driftwood. Although there are other algae eater species, they may not be compatible tank mates for your betta fish aquarium. Do your due diligence on these species before considering them. Guppies and Endlers live bearers. It's risky to keep guppies as their vibrant colors, usually found in males with large fins, can provoke aggression in bettas. Additionally, guppies are prone to nipping at betta fins. While they consume algae, it's not enough for tank cleanliness. Next up is Platies. These are lovely freshwater species, but like guppies, they occasionally nip betta fins. While they're also algae eaters, they're not as efficient as the Octocinclus Catfish or Nerite Snails. Most Plecos. Members of this species are known for being efficient algae eaters. The only problem is their size, as they might be too large to keep in a Betta aquarium. To an extent, some Plecostomus catfish can span 2 feet in length, and that requires a tank that holds hundreds of gallons. Hence, we'd recommend the Bristlenose and clown Plecos as an ideal algae eater for your Betta aquarium. Next is Amano Shrimp. Though these crustaceans are gentle in nature, bettas have a tendency to nip on them and may even eat smaller specimens. Though some betta fish will get along well with Amano shrimp, the risk may outweigh the benefits of having them in the tank. And next we have cherry shrimp. This invertebrate's not as ideal as an algae eater for your betta fish tank, as this species of shrimp might end up as fish food for the bettas. Unfortunately, most dwarf shrimp species like ghost shrimp may end up as snacks. Should you choose to try and keep some shrimp in your betta tank, it's best to try with a few ghost shrimp or feeder shrimp and see how your fish responds. Let's talk about Siamese algae eaters. Although these species are avid algae eaters when young, they need to be kept in bigger aquariums, as they can grow to about 6 inches and need to be kept in schools. Siamese algae eaters tend to stop eating algae as they mature, and they can get a little aggressive during feeding. And finally, Chinese algae eaters. Another fish species that is too large for your tank. Chinese algae eaters can grow over 10 inches in length, and you'll need a tank of at least 55 gallons if you decide to keep them long term. Although cleaner fish species are great additions to a betta tank, they're bottom feeders and are not as effective in resolving your algae problem. A lot of beginners assume that they eat algae and have no need for fish food. While they do feed on any uneaten betta food that sinks to the bottom, you would still need to feed them a healthy diet. The following fish are not as effective in cleaning your tank of algae, but would still make good tank mates. First, Corydoras Catfish. They make great tank mates for betta fish, as they're quite social. However, they prefer to hang out at the bottom of the tank. Smaller cories are a better fit for most betta aquariums, but keep in mind that the smallest species, the dwarf and pygmy cories, tend to hang out in the water column or on plant surfaces more than the bottom of the tank. On to the Kuhli Loachj. These eel-like bottom dwellers scour your betta tank for leftover food. These peaceful, mostly nocturnal fish prefer to be in groups of 4 or more. It's best to provide hiding spots like driftwood and rocks to make them feel secure during the day, as they might burrow into the substrate. Next is Whiptail Catfish. The Whiptail Catfish is an odd freshwater species for sure, but they are peaceful. They can blend into their environment by resembling twigs in order to avoid predators. They would still need to be fed tablets or wafers so they thrive. Now that we've covered what fish and inverts work, let's take a step back and talk about algae itself. Algae are plant-like organisms that grow their food through photosynthesis. As they come in various types, some are more difficult to control. Whether you have a new or mature tank, algae will always spawn. But there are various ways to control algae growth, from manual scrubbing to growing live plants, increasing maintenance, limiting waste products, fish food, and reducing aquarium light duration are all effective. But adding a few algae eaters is probably the most interesting and natural way to do this. We've got a whole video all about the types of aquarium algae that you can encounter. Check out the card at the top of your screen for that video. While algae eaters are beneficial for betta tank maintenance, there are other methods that are also helpful. Excessive algae would usually mean a light and or nutrient imbalance. If your betta is territorial, do consider these other options to manage algae. First, cut the lights. Algae thrives in well-lit environments with ample nutrients. Avoid sunlight and use a timer for your aquarium lights. We recommend keeping them on for around 6 hours daily to prevent excessive algae growth. Next is growing live plants. Apart from adding to the aesthetic of your tank, live plants can also combat algae growth effectively, as they compete with algae and absorb excess nutrients, improve water quality, add oxygen to the water, and overall just improve the quality of your tank. Fast-growing stem plants aid in controlling persistent algae issues, although they still need to be cared for and fertilized regularly, as dead plant matter can also affect the quality of water in your tank. Next is more maintenance. High nitrate and phosphate levels contribute to algae blooms. A regular nitrate test is important, and aquarists should consistently change their tank water when needed. This is going to help keep your nitrate levels down to 40 parts per million or less. You may also clean and remove algae manually by using an algae scraper to clean the glass before sucking the water out of the tank with your gravel vacuum. A toothbrush should be enough to clean ornaments, rocks, and driftwood. And finally, reduce feeding. Overfeeding your fish can lead to poor water quality and excessive algae growth. Make sure your fish finish the food you give them and net out the excess. Uneaten pellets or granules that sink to the bottom will go to waste and increase nitrate and phosphate levels alike. Next up, let's talk about temperament. Betta fish are known in the hobby as an aggressive species. Though this reputation isn't always warranted, some veteran aquarists have no problem handling their bettas with other tank mates. Bettas are originally bred for combat. Although this might be the case, some bettas are more aggressive than others, and it all boils down to their individual personality. Although there are risks involved in building a community with bettas and other fish species, there are ways to remedy this issue, like having a huge space in your tank so tank size wouldn't matter. This will help curb the aggressive nature of the betta fish. But in case the risks are greater than the benefits, be prepared for another backup, or you may need to consider rehoming them. So, there you have it, our list of the best algae eaters for your betta tank. If you like our content, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Visit our blog in the description and pin comment to support us. Or better yet, click the next video on your right. We'll see you soon.